Welcome to the Steve Reeve Podcast with the best moments from the past week and a few things that didn't make it to air. Monday.
Halloween is very, very close. Of course, you probably got into it with the parties over the weekend already. As we know, it's this Friday, but there's usually 2 weekends of Halloween parties, depending on where the big date actually falls. There's a chance to get some fake party photos generated, and I do mean literally generated. There's a new AI app that lets you pay way too much money to generate images of you dressed up in costume at a Halloween party. If that's not the saddest thing that I've heard in a long time, it's so sad. Of course, your costume, as well as the party in these AI-generated images, keep changing as well. You pay for a number of generations, you keep hitting the button, and you're just going to keep getting different stuff. There's no prompts involved. So either you're just vainly looking at CGI photo of yourself after CGI photo of yourself, or you're actually trying to utilize them to convince people on your social media feed or whatever that you are the king or queen of Halloween and that you somehow hit a dozen parties in one weekend, but didn't seem to find anybody else to take photos with you while you did it. See how it's kind of sad?
It's time for Cruz Music News with Steve Reeve.
Kicking off the news is Linkin Park kicking off a South American leg of their gigantic world tour that celebrates their 2024 release From Zero and is ongoing all the way into 2026. After they are stopping down in South America with help from Poppy through that leg, they're going to be moving on to the Middle East and to Australia before hitting Europe again, and on and on and on and on and on. Seems like they're never stopping. Meanwhile, the big biopic surrounding a portion of Bruce Springsteen's life, Deliver Me From Nowhere, has arrived. And of course, the soundtrack is a huge part of it. Greta Van Fleet reeling after finally seeing the release of something that they couldn't even believe they wanted to be a part of, or that they were wanted to be a part of in the first place. They said this came through, and it was like, you definitely can't say no to this because Bruce Springsteen is such a big influence on us. And they are definitely a big part of the story, of course, the movie, the music, which stars Jeremy Allen White as Springsteen as he was creating a 1982 album. Meanwhile, friend of Springsteen in real life, John Bon Jovi, says he wants that treatment as well. Fresh from the release of his friend's big screen biopic, John Bon Jovi saying he wants, at some point in his life, to see a biopic of himself made. Who would play him? Well, he didn't speculate at this point, but I mean, there could be a large number of people available to do that job. That would be fun. And there's certainly an appetite for biopics currently. That's it for your music news this morning. I'm Steve Reeve. If you want to stop the onslaught of 6-7 from your kids, I've got the solution for you. It's pretty simple, actually. You have to make it not cool. You can't say, no, don't say that. You can't be annoyed by it. You can't have a big reaction that's just going to reinforce the behavior. You have to make it not cool. Parents, here's what you do. You dress up as 6 and 7 for Halloween. And consider it an early Christmas present to yourself because you won't be hearing 6-7 for the rest of the year, at least. Mark my words.
Tuesday.
I think it might be a snowy Halloween this year. I mean, I don't know for sure. We have a chance for it to melt off between now and then if it slows down at some point. But as a kid, I do remember it being a marker. You'd be in that week before Halloween just watching the weather every single day, checking out that window. Is it going to come? Is it going to come? Because if it was a Halloween without snow, that meant that I didn't have to wear like a parka underneath my costume. It meant that I could be a little bit more comfortable going out there in the world without mom being like, you're going to freeze your hair. Your hair will freeze. You can only be out until 8 p.m., you know, that kind of thing. I was like, no, Mom, we only have so many years of trick-or-treating available to us, and we're not going to waste any of them.
You're listening to the Steve Reeve Podcast from 100.5 Cruz FM.
Slash is slashing the possibility of seeing Guns N' Roses performing at the Sphere in Las Vegas. While he has very nice things to say about how cool the venue is, he's a little bit hesitant, and he says it's because, and this was on Eddie Trunk's Trunk Nation Sirius XM show, that he's hesitant about playing there because it's a great visual show. I think that in almost every case for a band, it becomes a visual performance as opposed to seeing a rock and roll show. So there's that. However, many rock bands have already had a residency there at the Sphere in Las Vegas, and we are sending people to see the Eagles there in January. Keep on listening for those keywords. Details at cruiseradio.com. Also, Jack White has shared an interesting cover of sorts. I mean, do you really call it a cover if he also just made the original under the name of the White Stripes? But a new cover of Seven Nation Army with footage from the streets of Iran. Says that there's showing some Tehran natives who are nodding along to this White Stripes classic song, Seven Nation Army, which came out in 2003, but has now been revamped, changed, reutilized in 2025 in an interesting and unexpected way. And sad news to end off for music news, Jack DeJohnette. This was a jazz drummer, absolutely influential, working alongside legends like Miles Davis, Alice Coltrane, Herbie Hancock, and more. He has passed away at a hospital in Kingston, New York, due to heart failure, as confirmed by the New York Times. He died at the age of 83. And that's it for your music news this morning. I'm Steve Reeve. Thinking about the educators in Alberta this morning, I've maintained it for years. Strong public education is a backbone of society and is one of the strongest investments that we can possibly make for the future of the province, the country, etc. It is powerful. Lowering class sizes is, of course, part of that. Supporting teachers is part of that. Maybe not giving the most amount of taxpayer dollars to private education out of any province should also be a part of that. Maybe it's an option we can consider. But no, we're demonizing public teachers instead. The people who actually care about your kids. Boggles my brain just a little bit. It feels like the strong and free part is what's notwithstanding in Alberta this morning. But hope she has a nice trip to Saudi Arabia after a historic undermining of workers' rights. First time it's been used in Alberta. And the last time that it was even floated as an option was an idea to stop gay people from being able to marry. Historically, not the greatest associations. Anyway, school zones back in effect.
Wednesday.
A very different kind of morning this morning, though it seems like it is going back to the normalcy when you just sort of take it at face value that classes are back in session. But it is a little bit more complicated than that, for sure. And so it doesn't also feel that great. I mean, the historical use of the notwithstanding clause to force teachers back into classrooms under threat of $500 a day fines and more, it doesn't feel good to me. Make no mistake. The teachers, they want to be back in class teaching. They just overwhelmingly want to actually earn a living wage to do that. Not to mention the want for classroom size caps, something that would directly benefit students. If you want to look at it more on that side of things. It's so complex, though. It's more than we can get into in a minute's time. But it is also simple on some level, People should earn enough money from working to afford some dignity and comfort, and educators are not exempt from that. To say that teachers only work 6 hours a day, 10 months of the year, is kind of like saying the Blue Jays only put an effort on game days. You're missing the time, the effort, the dedication, the getting ready, the preparation that isn't on TV, and there is so much of it. You've heard of the Kissel curse. Brett Kissel curse striking at the start of NHL games. But now people are shining a light on the Brad Paisley track record. 18-inning World Series game just this week. It's not the first time that's happened, but I'll tell you something in common between that and the most recent 18-inning World Series game. Yes, that would be Brad Paisley singing the U.S. national anthem. So it's not so much the outcome of the game, it's the length that's affected when he sings. There have only been 2 18-inning World Series games. Brad sang before both of them. He's also had 2 other notable overtime games on the books as well, though maybe not quite as long. Paisley himself is aware. He's commented on it. He said just even this week to Variety, "I would like to be called Mr. More Baseball. If you like more baseball, I'm your guy." Well, you know what? We do want more baseball, but some of us have to work in the morning, Brad. Damn! Think of the East Coasters.
Hey, Alexa, play the Steve Reeve podcast.
There's a new memoir that will be on the horizon from Kim Thayil of Soundgarden fame. Of course, right in the thick of the Seattle music scene as things were really building. He says that the memoir, going to be titled A Screaming Life, follows his experiences, journeys, and growth with the band, as well as a lot to do with that Seattle music scene. Guess it'll be out in May of 2026 via HarperCollins. So, just keep holding your breath. Battlefield 6 has launched a brand new soundtrack alongside the Red Sec Battle Royale mode that is available for free for players. But features Bob Dylan, the likes of Limp Bizkit, Dr. Dre in there, an in-game radio station launching with just a whole bunch of different artists, Godsmack, Pantera, Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Prodigy, and more. It looks like actually a pretty well-curated list and is getting just as popular as the game is, at least as it comes out brand new. And then we've got a celebration for Cyndi Lauper coming with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction next week's ceremony. There will be performances from The Killers and Vogue and more, and Chapel Roan will be inducting Cyndi Lauper into the Hall of Fame amongst all of the other honorees. That's it for your music news this morning. I'm Steve Reeve. 1 in 8 people, according to one poll, claim that they have lived in a home that was haunted at some point. Another study shows 60% of people saying they've had at least one paranormal experience in their life. I gotta say, I have never had... I'm open to the idea. I am, but I've never had any such evidence presented to me, my eyeballs, my ears, my brain whatsoever. Nothing like that. But I am always so curious about people's stories. Now, when I was growing up in town, I lived in Waterways for quite a while, and there was a place that's just not there anymore, a building that was nearby where the old rail station was and the old railway, and they had a window up in this old brick-looking building, and in that window, there would sometimes be sort of the shape of a face. It must have just been a picture, like somebody's profile in silhouette or something, and it would be there sometimes, and it wouldn't be there other times, and I had a paper route in the area, had friends that we would walk around, and it would be a thing where it'd be like, oh, is the ghost there? Is the ghost up in the window right now? Pretty sure there was no such thing. But still, that's about as close as I can get. Other than that, as far as paranormal experiences, encounters in homes that are supposedly haunted...
It's a big old goose egg, gang! It's a fat 0! Hello!
Transmission over. Want more Steve? New podcast episodes happen every Friday, or just tune into the Steve Reeve Show. Weekday mornings starting at 5:30 a.m. on 100.5 Cruz FM.